how to become a Databricks Certified Developer for Apache Spark 3.0. First, we're going to answer the question, what is the certification? Then, I'm going to tell you about the advantages and give you an overview about the exam. Then we're going to dive deeper into the exam topics and the question types so you know exactly what to expect. Finally, I'm going to tell you what to know and how to prepare. Let's get started. So, what is the Databricks Spark certification? The Databricks Certified Associate Developer for Apache Spark 3.0 certification certifies that you know about the basics of Apache Spark and that you know how to deal with Spark's data frames. It is one of 4 certifications that Databricks currently offers. The certification is part of the Databricks Academy. The Databricks Academy offers paid trainings and courses so you can get familiar with Databricks products. So, why should you take the Databricks Spark certification? Data certifications are a great way to get a foot in the door. Here on the right, I plot the Google search interest in the terms data science and data science course, and you can see that since 2019, interest in data science courses is peaking, which means that your competition is leveling up. So if you're trying to transition to a new role that includes Spark, or even to try to get a new job that includes Spark, it's great to have some certifications to show to your employer to say, hey, I'm putting in the work to educate myself and I actually know my way around Spark. Databricks is also a very recognized company in the big data space, and that is because Apache Spark was actually developed by the same people that later founded Databricks. Finally, Apache Spark is a very well-established software for using big data in production settings. It's used by companies such as Tencent, Alibaba, IBM and eBay. Now, let me give you a general overview of the exam. The exam is offered both in Scala and Python, which means you can pick either of those languages to take the exam in. You can take the exam via online proctoring only, which means to take the exam, you download the software to your computer through which the exam will be delivered. While you're taking the exam, you'll be monitored via webcam and microphone. The exam contains 60 questions and you have 2 hours to complete all of them. The exam costs $200 per attempt, which means that if you're not successful in one attempt, you would have to pay $200 again to try again. However, the certification is valid indefinitely. It is tied to a specific Spark version though, so now if you take the exam for Apache Spark 3.0, it will be tied to Apache Spark 3.0. Now, after this overview, why don't we look a little deeper into the Spark exam topics? There are 2 main blocks. The first block is about understanding of the Spark architecture. The second block is about DataFrame API applications. The first block is further divided into 2 subblocks, conceptual and applied understanding. For conceptual understanding of the Spark architecture, you can expect about 10 questions. For applied understanding of the architecture, you can expect about 7 questions. However, the biggest block is really the DataFrame API applications, where you can expect about 43 questions. Well, if you're thinking about taking the exam, you're for sure curious to know what kinds of questions to expect. First off, let me say that for every question you have 5 answer possibilities, but only one of them is correct. For the Spark architecture, you'll be asked about definitions. For example, which component does this and that? Also, you will be asked about hierarchies between different components. How does this component relate to that other component? Finally, you will be asked to predict the Spark behavior. For example, they'll tell you Spark is in this specific state, how does it react now? Here for the Spark architecture questions, it's really important that you know the theory behind Spark. It's a little bit different for the DataFrame API applications. Here you'll be dealing a lot with code. For example, they'll tell you Spark should do this or that. Please select the appropriate code block. So you have to select the code block that makes Spark do this or that. Or they'll present you with a code block and you have to identify the error in that code block. Another type of question is they give you a code block that contains blanks and you have to select the code blocks that correctly fill in those blanks. Finally, they'll give you a number of code blocks and you just have to tell them what the right order is. The DataFrame API questions are really all about the practice. So does this satisfy you? Maybe not, right? You want to know what exactly do you need to study, and that's what I want to shed some light on. So for the architecture questions, you should know the context and hierarchy of Spark components. For example, you should know what a job, a stage, a task, an executor, a slot, a data frame, an RDD, and a partitioner, and how they all relate together. You should also know how Spark does and achieves certain things. For example, fault tolerance, lazy evaluation, adaptive query execution, actions versus transformations, what are narrow and what are wide transformations, what's shuffling, what's the broadcast and accumulator variable, what's the storage level. Finally, there are some things you should know about Spark deployment. For example, which different deployment modes exist, what's the location of the Spark driver versus the Spark executors, what's the purpose of different components of development, and finally, what are the many configuration options that Spark has and how do they influence the behavior of Spark. To score well in the architecture questions, you really have to put in some time to study. They can be quite complicated and asking you about things that you may not deal with in Spark on a daily basis. So putting in some time here to study is well worth it. So what about DataFrame API applications? What's really interesting here is that Databricks actually provides you with a PDF copy of the Spark documentation that you can use during the exam. I think that's incredibly valuable because it helps you figure out some wrong answers from the get-go, but only if you know how to read the documentation. For example, here is the documentation for the DataFrame drop command, and you can see how it accepts many different types, right? So those type-ins can be very valuable in figuring out wrong answers. Pay attention to detail when reading the documentation. Also, when you look at the documentation, you should get familiar with things like selecting, filtering, dropping, sorting, and renaming. In addition, you should know how to read and write data frames from and to disk. There are more complicated topics that you should definitely practice, like joins, UDFs, aggregations, partitioning. Once again, this section, the DataFrame API section, is all about practice. If you practice enough, you'll be able to get a good score. And the good news is, this is the biggest part of the exam. Alright, now you know the content of the exam. But how to prepare? I suggest 3 steps. First, learn the concepts. Second, use the DataFrame API to get some practice. And third, do practice exams. For learning the concepts, Databricks actually recommends parts of 2 books. I've read both of them and I find them both very insightful. They work especially well in combination with each other because every book has a slightly different focus. To understand the Spark architecture, I also recommend you check out some other online resources. They're great authors with great content about Spark's architecture, for example on Medium. Also, if you have time on your hands, it wouldn't hurt to do another online course that focuses specifically on Spark's architecture. Finally, I would say to prepare for all the architecture questions and understand the concepts behind Spark, you should plan at least a month. That affords you ample time to really dive deep into things that you don't understand and grasp all the components that there are. The second step in preparing for the exam is using the DataFrame API. And this is fun. Databricks provides something called Databricks Community Edition, where you can sign up for free and get started using Spark right away. I would recommend to practice, you come up with a scenario like you have an online store and you want to make a table of customers and transactions and you want to find out things like who are my most valuable customers. In this way, you'll get to know a lot of Spark concepts hands-on and train already for what you need to know to pass the DataFrame API part in the exam. And finally, I would say if you already have experience in Python and Scala, plan about a month for this, okay? You really want to get familiar with all these UDFs, the joins, so taking a little bit of time here really pays off. Nothing prepares you for the real exam like a practice exam. And this is why I would recommend doing practice exams as the third and last step of your Spark certification preparation journey. I would purchase a set of high-quality practice exams. But what does high quality mean really? Well, it means that for every answer there's a thorough explanation giving you the chance to understand what's wrong and how to improve. The way that I would recommend you deal with the practice exams is do them all once. Note down any answers that you get wrong and try to understand what your mistakes were. Why did you make those mistakes? How can you improve? Then do all practice exams once again. This will help you boost your confidence so you can pass that Spark certification on the first try. Now you're ready to get certified. As the day of the exam approaches, you might be wondering which last-minute steps in preparation you should do. A week before, I think you should read Criterion's exam preparation guide. It includes valuable information about what you can and what you can't do during the online proctored exam. Also, just take the chance and do Criterion's system readiness check. It will tell you if your webcam and if your microphone work okay to work with the Criterion software. Finally, I just said go through the practice exams once again. Well, this week before, that's probably the right point in time. Then one day before, you should make sure your desk is free of clutter, because Criterion doesn't allow you to have any clutter on your desk. Also, for all the coders out there, if you have a second monitor, just disconnect that. They don't like that either. Then finally, I would say that's just my personal tip. Choose already an outfit the day before that you feel comfortable in. You can't wear jewelry, you can't feel a watch. You have to sit on your chair for 2 hours. So, why not get that out of the way and go into this exam with a very low stress level. Congratulations, you did it. It's exam day and you finished all your preparations. Turn off your cell phone and get a glass of water. Also, be ready about 5 minutes or more before the scheduled time. Then, once the exam starts, you have 120 minutes to answer those 60 questions. Well, from my experience, 120 minutes is more than enough. Some questions are just knowledge questions, so you can answer them rather quickly. Well, then all that's left to say is keep calm and get certified. Earlier, I talked about high-quality practice exams. And when I was preparing to take the Databricks Spark certification, I was really looking for a set of high-quality practice exams. But I couldn't find any. I wanted to know, where am I wrong, why am I wrong, and how can I improve? Based on this experience, I've created a set of high-quality practice exams. They include thorough explanations for almost every answer, and also they include links to literature from expert authors. In addition, for the DataFrame API, there are code snippets that you can run interactively in Databricks Free Community Edition. I really invite you to check them out. I also wish you all the best for the rest of your Spark journey. Let's get you certified.